Hello, everybody. This is Scott Roberts along with Jerry Hubbell and Kent Marts here, and we are with the OpenGOTO Community Live. Uh, this is just our second show, but we're going to be live here every day, Monday through Friday at 4:30 p.m. Central. And so it's great to have you all here with us today. I can see there's a few people already signed on, and hope you guys are having a great Friday. Uh, Jerry and Kent, what are we going to be talking about today?
I've been on the forum a little bit today, looking over some stuff, and I created a new poll today that I want to talk about a little bit, and also the couple of the polls that we've done in the past already that I want to talk about in terms of customer service and what our plans are going into the future for using this platform and improving our documentation and our products. Basically, is what I'd like to talk about.
And I've got a couple of issues to talk about, not issues, but um, discussion about tracking when the tablet goes to sleep and the app, why the app won't connect after I was able to get it to connect, and then a couple other things if we have time to get to it.
Okay, all right. Okay, so why don't we get started with you, Jerry? Let's talk about the documentation.
Okay, so I put it. Let me. I'll share my desktop here. Let me go to the page first. So I put out a poll about a month ago. It'll take me a couple seconds here to get to where I'm going. I'll go ahead and share my desktop.
Okay.
All right, do you see that?
Yes.
Here we go.
All right, so the first poll I want to talk about, which I put together or I put out there about a month ago, probably, is a user manual poll. And I asked the question, what do you not like about the Explorer Scientific user manuals? Not what you like, but what you do not like. And I had several choices here, and we'll go over those here. So it's kind of interesting. The questions are, I can't find it on your website. I can't understand it. I didn't provide the information. It didn't provide the information I was looking for. I couldn't find the information I couldn't find the information I was looking for.
Same question, right?
Not quite. It either didn't provide it or I couldn't find it. Those are the separate things. So
Okay.
so they so basically it's the same question. You're correct because it didn't provide it basically, and it didn't provide enough pictures.
Okay.
It's too technical, which I was gratified to see that not many people chose that one. It provided too much detail. It confused me, and again, not many people chose that one. One person maybe. It didn't come with the product. That doesn't seem to be an issue. It didn't explain how to use the product. So the biggest thing from this poll, and then there was a thing. It has a manual.
Oh
So I'll
yeah,
put
right.
that as the last one.
Got one.
Eh.
All right.
And everybody liked the format because nobody complained about it, I guess. So I can assume that they were okay with the format. But the two big things is they couldn't find what they were looking for, and it didn't explain how to use a product to their satisfaction. So that means they want more information and better information. Is what I got from that.
Right.
There were some specific things. People did a bunch of comments on some things, which was great. And Robert Hoskin actually identified a couple of issues. I don't know if you can see this. He couldn't find the links for the correct manual for the access to and allows menu. I fixed that, and also the getting started pages wasn't available like it should have been. I fixed that also. So let me show you that real quick, what I fixed. Where's my Explore Scientific link? So when you go to our mounts PMC-8 mounts, you've got this list of links right here at the top. And the first one is getting started with your PMC-8 system. I added that today. All right. So that's at the top of the link, and then you can get these other. Then you have the software and stuff. But once you get to that, this is where Bob Hoskins said that the link was messed up. So you can see right at the top of the page are the two manuals, the one for the G11 Exos 2 and the other one for the Exos 100. All right. The one for the G11 and the Exos 2 is kind of a generic PMC-8 manual, where the one for the Exos 100 is the actual for the iExos 100. So that's what I fixed today. And but one of the things that people also asked about in that survey was they don't want to see written material. They want to see videos. So what I put out today is that this program we're going to be doing every day is going to be the format for short topic videos that are going to be 5 minutes long or maybe up to 10 minutes long. And so and we're going to be able to, we're working on it. Scott and I were working on it earlier to be able to share the iPad screen and the Android screen to demonstrate on ExploreStars how to do things in ExploreStars. That's probably the biggest thing beginners have been asking about. So that's what I plan on. That's what I plan on working on to be able to share that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I just stopped sharing my screen right now. So
Okay.
Are there any questions? Any questions come up? Who's joined us today?
We've got Chris Moses on with us today. Dan Janicek is with us. There's about a dozen people watching or so right now. So nice group.
Good.
But hey, if anybody has questions out there, please ask them, and we're happy to give the answers here. But let's move on. Kent, you had mentioned some things about the tablet going to sleep. A couple other things here. Steve Seidentop's Seidentop, I think is the way.
Yeah, I've got
Actually, it's not
I've got some
Seidentop, I think
comments.
it's Seidentop.
Seidentop, is that how you pronounce his name? I always call it
I believe
Seidentop.
it is. Yes.
Seidentop. I've got some comments about Kent's topic also when I get a chance to chime in.
Okay, you are muted, Kent. You don't
There
have.
we go.
Yeah, you don't have to mute yourself. Just let
I
it rip.
just have it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Mr. Microphone.
Yeah.
Mr. Microphone. So the first thing I had topic to talk about was tracking when the tablet goes to sleep, and that actually came up today and yesterday on the forum. Jerry, why don't you go ahead and tackle that and explain why it does what it does?
So Kent explained it in the forum. Basically, the original design and functionality of the ExploreStars was such that if you walked away with the tablet from the mount, if your connection dropped, your Wi-Fi connection dropped, it would stop the mount as a safety mode. That was a safe mode to configure to when you lose communications with the ExploreStars app. And again, the design of the ExploreStars app was primarily for visual use, where you're at the scope, you're there. So if you were to walk away, or if you were to turn off your tablet for some reason, as if you're not going to use it anymore, or if you're not going to be observing, then it would stop the mount. And we had the reason that came to be was because Scott demonstrated that for us when we first started using ExploreStars with the PMC-8. He actually walked away from the mount, and the mount kept driving, and it ended up in a weird position, I think, at some point. And is that correct, Scott?
Yeah. I had we were testing during that time, and it kept going, and we realized that this could be a safety issue. Okay. If the if the mount would just continue to go, okay, and you lost control of it somehow, let's say your battery died or something like that, so you weren't, if it was still continuing to drive, there was no way to turn it off except to unplug it at that point.
Right. So we added this feature. I added a watchdog feature in the communications in the firmware to monitor the communications, and then if it drops, then it will stop it'll turn the tracking off. And that's been in place for a long time. And then astrophotographers wanted to use Explore Stars. So of course that's not a feature you want to see when you start an imaging run and you walk away from the scope and you disable your Explore Stars. You want it to continue to run and take its pictures. So at that point I made a change to the firmware, and it was a quick update because I had a flag internal that I could just internally turn on and off. And I created two versions of the firmware. One is the A version. So for example, 9T15 or 9T as in Tango 15 or 9T as in Tango 16 alpha. Those alpha versions are the ones where the communications watchdog is disabled. The standard 9T15, 9T16 versions are just the standard watchdog enabled version where it will stop the tracking when communications is dropped on either using the ASCOM driver or the Explore Stars. And it also does that on the serial, whether it's a serial or Wi-Fi connection, it doesn't matter. So that's how that works. Now, there's been a recent request today or yesterday. I've been considering that's a feature that I could flesh out in the firmware to have a switch so that you could toggle that yourself with one version of the firmware where there's no more two different versions. But that's going to take a new command code, command language statement, and some other work in the firmware to get that in there. It's not it's an easy fix. It's just that I haven't scheduled it or I haven't done it, is what it comes down to. Because, again, it's just as easy to go. If you're used to loading your firmware, it's just as easy using the configuration manager to go grab that version of the firmware and load it on your system. It takes 2 minutes at that much. It may take 1 minute to do the firmware upgrade. And most people, once they go to the once they disable the watchdog timer for the communications, they just leave it that way because they don't care.
It's this, I call it the star party mode.
Yeah, so you could just leave it. You can just disable it and leave it that way. If you're concerned about it, you can go back to the other mode, the standard firmware. But again, you may just feel like you can just load it on there once and it's done for.
Right. Steve Siedentop asked a question. Maybe you already answered it. Perhaps in an imaging mode and Explore Stars maintain the safety feature, allow imagers to control that in the UI and abstract that functionality above the firmware.
No, it's in the firmware because that's where I'm monitoring and making the communications connection through the serial port
making
or
a
the Wi-Fi.
suggestion to add that as a feature.
Yeah, so that's what I was saying. It would take another command. In fact, I've already identified what the command would be. It'd be ESW for the watchdog timer. Enable, disable. It'd be a toggle, just like when we switch modes between serial and Wi-Fi. It'd be a toggle command. That would be reachable from the high end, right, from Explore Stars or from the ASCOM driver. That would be included in that, but that's going to take some work.
Okay. Okay.
So that answers Steve's request. To Explore Stars, you can toggle it there and not have to go back to the configuration manager, right, Jerry?
That's right. It'd be directly into the PMC-Eight saying, yeah, disable or enable the watchdog timer for the communications.
Okay. So I think we've got that covered. The next one on my list was the app won't connect after I've been connected once. What's going on? Typically, that's caused on the Android and Windows excuse me, Android and Apple, because the app will be running in the background and they'll go off and do something else, and the next day set the system up and get it connected Wi-Fi, and then they'll launch the app and they get the please wait message. And it's hard to realize that app never shut down, even though you quote shut it down. And so on the iPad, if you hit the home button twice, that brings up all the apps that are running in the background, and it's really easy just to flick it off. In fact, I could show you to make it go away. And then on the Android, there's a square button you have to press. So I've shut the app down. So let's launch the app. The app's running. There we go. So if you hit the home button twice, it shows a list of all the apps that are running. And to close down the app on an iPad, you simply, don't do that. But you swipe it up. And that's how you make those go away, run in the background. Sort of hard to do left-handed and backwards. And that's on the iPad. And I also have my iPad so it will not go to sleep, because that can also cause the Wi-Fi connection to drop and cause some problems. So on the devices I use with the PMC-8, I set them to never go to sleep, so they always stay awake. You can do that on the iPad. Sadly, you cannot do it on any Android I've used. So on the Android, we've got it here, and this is going to be a little bit harder to do. The square button right there.
Yeah, I think Jimi Hendrix could do it upside down and backwards behind his back.
Yeah, but that's it. So there's the apps I have running, and you can see one of them is Explore Stars, and I've just gotten to where I just hit the clear all button.
Okay.
And make them go there. There we go. And make them all go away. Now, if you're connected to Wi-Fi and relaunch the app, you're going to connect and go on down the road. And that causes a fairly regular number of calls as people try to suffer through that.
Yeah, typically on the PMC-8 system, we've got a wide diversity of different devices that people are using. So typically the best thing to do in general to start from scratch, shut down your apps, and then maybe even shut down the tablet, reboot the tablet, get that running, start the PMC-8 up, and go through the sequence from square one. And then that almost is guaranteed to work all the time as long as you've seen it work in the past.
But the key is they don't know that app is still running in the background. You can fully shut it down, and it's going to launch and still be running back there.
Yeah, right.
I had one guy that on the phone I talked to, and he's on the forum, or he was. It took me, 15 or 20 minutes, and he finally got the button pushed twice fast enough. And he's like, okay. And I said, well, you might as well just go ahead and close them all. And it was on an iPad. So he started flicking, and I said, count them. And he got to 100, and he stopped, and he said,
100?
Dang grandkids. And
he had 100.
He had 100 and all kinds of.
Yeah, and he sat there just flicking and flicking.
Yeah, so I wonder his tablet worked at all.
Well, when I first got my iPad a long time ago, I didn't understand how to shut down programs. I just closed them, and thought they were done, and they weren't.
Right. And so his grandkids had got it and loaded up a whole bunch of games, and just all those games are running in the background. So he was amazed by that, but he figured it out. So, all right, no more questions have popped up, it looks like. So the next thing I have on my list is one somebody asked a few days ago, motor failure issues and how to immediately test the mount after purchase. You want to tackle that one, Jerry, or you want me to?
I'll let you. I think it's pretty straightforward, but go ahead. I think
so. So I go ahead and I tell them plug it in, connect wirelessly, launch the app, and then use the virtual joystick to just grab the center fireball and drag it to a corner. And if it motors fire up, they're working. if you want to use the speed controller, and you'd be surprised how many people don't figure this out. They'll say my left, right, and up, down buttons aren't working. And I'll say, see that number little in the middle of it? There's a 0 there. And I said, yes. And I said, that means you're moving at a speed of 0. And if you're in your car and you're moving at a speed of 0, that means you're going exactly nowhere.
Well, that's the tracking rate. The 0 speed is the sidereal rate.
Yeah, but they hit
seconds a second. So
yeah, but they hit 9 and hit left, right, up, down, and off it goes real fast. And so I tell them, hit 9, now hit left, right, up, and down, and they all work, and the buttons work, and that's how you know your motors are working. Had a guy in this morning, and he asked the question, literally that question, and we showed him. He said, well, what do we do if there's a motor failure? And I said, well, they're pretty well off the motor shelves, and it's a pretty simple, easy thing to fix, but we don't really have motors that fail. And Jerry, your motors have been being used for how long now?
Yeah, 3 years. Over 3 years we've been delivering these systems, and we really haven't had a motor failure or even a board failure in terms of that. We've had some defective boards that have been delivered that have failed right off the bat. One, we had a Wi-Fi module that actually wasn't sturdy on there and came off the board, which was kind of interesting. But in terms of failures and driver chip failures, or we don't have that. But one thing we do have that people think is a motor failure is if the cable is not tightened fully. We have that a lot of times where people have plugged in the DB9 connector or plugged in the connector and not got it fully seated or locked in. That's a big problem. And you'll see that. And sometimes you'll see it as the motor doesn't turn at all, so they'll report that, the RA moves, the right ascension moves, but the deck doesn't move. Or they'll say it's making noise. So if it's a partial connection, like if the connector is cocked at an angle when you plug it in and you don't realize it's not seated, it'll only drive 2 of the 4 signal lines in the motor, and that's just that's just one phase of the stepper motor. You need both phases to be driven. So that'll make a bunch of racket noise if you see that.
I had a guy this morning email and said his deck head wasn't turning, and I replied back, have you connected the coiled cable, the deck cable? And he said, what's that? So I took a picture of the one behind me and sent it to him, and I haven't heard back from him yet, but I suspect either he does not have the cable, which is entirely possible, we didn't get it in there,
possibly,
or he just didn't plug it in. But either way, that's a fairly straightforward answer to that.
Right.
Okay, so that's how you test it. You plug it in and just see if the motors go. And we also have had questions of people ask us, can we turn off the music sounds? How do you? They can't find a setting for that.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And, they don't necessarily believe that that's literally the sound the motors make, and it's them ramping up and ramping down.
It's music to my ears. I know that the motors are working properly. I love the sound of those stepper drives. They just sound so precision. I know it goes boo-doo-doo-doo, like that, but that's the ramp up. And then it has the same kind of tones, going lower and lower as it's ramping down. That's in
manual. That's on manual mode in the Explorer Stars. That's not in the slew mode. And when you go to an object, it does a smooth ramp, and you'll hear that too when it goes. Woo! It'll ramp up and down like that. But the musical tone is great because the manual moves. It makes that noise.
Yeah, Steve says I like that sound. I do too.
I do too, and it certainly doesn't sound like the coffee grinders that we know are out there.
Yeah.
And Jerry, why didn't you put a beep on it? Because all the other mounts out there, when they finish the slew, go beep. And
how about you just look on the chip or in the eyepiece and actually see the object there? I think that's a good no-go.
Yeah,
no.
There's other indicators on the display too that you can look for, and I would suggest this for everybody I know you just like to go to the graphical interface and select your object and then go to and not pay attention to the numbers so much, because that is a little more technical. But once you get used to using the mount, if you pay attention to the OTA section of the numbers that shows you where it's pointing at, then you'll know when it's slewing. You'll see it, look at it while you're slewing it, and you'll see how fast the numbers turn. And then when you get to the object, the numbers will be stable in RA and deck. And but you'll see the altitude azimuth changing. So that's something else to learn about how mounts work in the celestial sphere.
So Steve just asked a humorous question.
Beep.
Is the Meade AutoStar beep trademarked? Scott, you may know that answer.
My answer is it wouldn't surprise me if it was. I was there, as many of you do know, I was there for 21 years. Meade trademarked, tried to patent all aspects of the GOTO system. I honestly, I don't think it's patented or trademarked as far as the sound of the tone. I don't know that you can trademark a beep unless it's a very distinctive sound. So I think they just got
Meade slew
they
done.
got an
Meade
off-the-shelf beep, is
slew
what I
done.
think. So,
Yeah. So those
Having
are all.
talked about that, we have talked about adding audio cues to Explore
yeah.
Stars
Oh yeah.
to give you indications like that, especially
Well,
if you're at the eyepiece, your eyeball's at the eyepiece, you
Yeah.
can't look at the screen. You want to hear some things maybe that are going on.
Yeah, you can put an audio file in the database. Yeah, we're already putting images in there, but there's room for an audio file. So if that's something that users want, we can start to develop that. Getting audio on all the thousands and thousands of objects that are in there would be quite a feat, really. So, but I guess it could be gradually added as we go along.
All right. So
Samuel
next
L.
question.
Jackson. Like his bedtime story. Yeah, I like that one. So
and maybe Mr. T.
yeah.
Mr.
Many.
T
I
would
mean,
be
there's
fun.
many. So I
Yeah.
like Burgess Meredith. If you get a Burgess Meredith type of guy. So
So,
anyhow,
or you, Scott. You have a great voice for for Scotty as
yeah,
opposed to
a great voice
Siri.
for keeping you up at night, which is maybe that's why I'm into this whole business. I don't know.
All right. So let's talk about polar align if there are clutches to freely move the mount to do that was the question. And on the Exos 100, well, there's no clutches to do a polar alignment. This
You
was
mean
off.
as far as the altitude and azimuth adjustment?
Yeah,
Is that what you're
I
talking
think
about?
that may be what they're asking. This came off of a PMC-8 or a Exos 2 question. So I'm not sure.
I think you was talking about automating that, motorizing it. I think that's what Steve Seedentop said.
Okay.
Is that who it was?
I
I
don't
remember
think so.
reading that message about
No.
maybe you can automate the motorize the altitude and azimuth to make the adjustment. I don't know.
I don't think it was. Steve may have commented on that post. I don't remember.
Okay.
And then the always popular periodic error correction and tracking. I know we covered this in the AAS talk we gave, but it might be worth talking here again about PEC and tracking accuracy and how to test it.
So, in terms of PEC or periodic error correction, there is no built-in periodic error correction on the PMC-8 system. That was a specific design choice that I made early on, and because in auto guiding, so just to make a quick statement about that, when you do periodic error correction on mid to low end mounts, the gear system, and even somewhat higher end mounts too, you're not going to correct 100% of the periodic error. You maybe get 70% or maybe 80% of it, which means you'll still have 5 seconds of periodic error to correct, even after you've got this. At best, with the lower end mounts, 5 seconds of periodic error, 5 arc seconds. So you're going to auto guide anyway. So the design choice was, okay, do we spend the time to implement periodic error correction, which entails a lot of stuff, hardware and software and firmware? Or do we just know that auto guiding is going to take care of it pretty much, and we don't need that system? That's a redundant system, in my opinion, my engineering opinion. So it was a redundant system that doesn't add any value to the way our mounts work today. That's not to say we're not going to consider it in the future, but on the mounts that we deliver today, we don't have it.
It does introduce a level of complication, doesn't it?
Well, the way I would implement
Do
it,
it
it would be
right. To do it right,
transparent. It'd be transparent to the user.
Yeah, Jerry
Okay.
identified something like 7 different drive error terms. It's not just periodic error. Okay, so in
Right.
the LX200, the smart drive was periodic error. That's it. Okay, so let's just forget about the 6 other terms. You know, the tooth-to-tooth gear error, all kinds of other errors that can happen. Okay, that's why the the telescope drive master is such a great solution. But we were
Right.
talking, was it yesterday or the day before, about the PhD two's predictive?
Predictive PE
Yeah.
correction. Yes. Uh-huh. And that does a pretty good job. It will. So if you're going to use auto guiding and you're using PhD2, you should take advantage of that because it's all integrated in their system. It's not a separate. I don't know how it's implemented, but it's a little cleaner thing to do that way than to have a separate system like we would build into the mount. That's probably a more effective way of doing it if you're going to have it.
Hey, Jerry and Scott, Chris Moses said, how does that compare to encoders? And
So the encoders, and I can talk to the telescope drive master, and the telescope drive master is much better than any auto guiding system because, first of all, it runs at a much faster rate. It runs at 5 times per second. And so it corrects not only the long-term periodic error, which is basically this sine wave shaped motion, but it also, I consider the non-periodic errors like the little ticks and little defects in the worm and the wheel that cause these little spikes. That was the biggest thing I complained about auto guiding when I was, even with my EQ6 mount back 10 years ago. That mount, it cost $1,300, but it still had these little ticks and burrs in worm defects to where it would ruin an image. You'd have this nice round star, but then you'd have this little spike next to each star.
Yeah.
And that pissed me off, to tell you the truth. So that's why I went searching for the telescope drive master, and I never went back. So the telescope drive master will correct a lot of that and non-periodic error. So that's the main thing. And then also, you're relying on a camera system to look at the sky when you're doing auto guiding. Now, what happens when you have these high clouds come through and you're in the middle of the night and you're asleep and your system all of a sudden decides it doesn't see the star anymore? You're SOL. The telescope drive master with an encoder doesn't care about the sky. It's looking at the mount itself. So that's another advantage.
okay, so Jerry, Scott noted that you had identified, like 70 gear errors. It might be fun to have one of our episodes talk about the 28 things that get in the way of astrophotography. Do a full segment or even a couple of segments back to back just on that. That's quite a document that really eye-opening to people who, they worry about one or two things, and you have really broken it down and got down into detail about the things that can influence.
So, right. The document basically says these are the things that keep you from having a perfect astro image, and we're talking perfect.
Yeah.
So that's a document. I think it may be posted on the forum. I have to look in the files section. But yeah, that'd be a good topic for discussion to help people understand exactly what the whole system is doing to create that perfect image, what it's trying to fix.
Okay, and so let's plan on doing that and give some advance notice on the days we're going to do it, so we might draw a crowd for people wanting to talk about that. Hi, Edwin. I see your question. I have the ED80 and use the 2 extensions. I have to push forwards a ways on the mount holder, basically talking about balancing the ED80 because of the way the foot's designed. Are there something similar to the rings that have the plate on the bigger scope so it's easier to balance? Yeah, you're doing good. On that.
Talking about he's got this foot. You can remove the bottom mounting foot entirely. Okay, you can buy things like Losmandy rings and then mount it.
Yeah, 90.
I got this
Yep.
mounted.
the Lost Mandy 90, or I found them there. Primaluca has some 90 millimeter rings. There's other ones out there. Some ADM has and they're actually a cradle system that works.
Yeah.
So there's ways to do it.
So you can see this is the ED80 carbon fiber, okay,
On top.
on top of a ED102. And I'm just mounted, I've got the rings mounted onto the grip, of the bottom cradle ring, because there's that one slot. And so this works out really well. But
Are
you
those
could go with the
Osmandy?
full Osmandy D plate system with it, and this is a good way to go. Now, Edwin, if if you want to talk to me more about it, or you want me to send you images of it or something like that, I can do that. But this is literally all it is. On this one, I have a D plate on the bottom. This little 4-inch telescope's mounted on a G11, and then I've got the Osmandy rings up here on top. And this works out really, really nice. You can see the little QHY auto guider back there, and then I got a QHY 163 on the back.
So, other people will get a Lost Mandy.
What is part call? What is part call? I don't understand, Edwin. What do you mean?
What's that part called? Those rings on the Lost Mandy rings. They're probably
Osmandy rings, I think.
125 millimeters in diameter. Edwin would be my guess. Edwin, we've got your email. I'll send you. We'll track that information down. I'll email you.
Sure.
Because I've got it. But it's like a Lost Mandy 125 rings. I know there's a set of ADM rings that are 125. The barrel on the ED8001, the white tube, is 90 or 91 millimeters in diameter, and it's like 95 millimeters on the carbon fiber, if I remember correctly. It's been a while since I've measured those, but I think that's what those are. So any rings that are bigger than that will work.
Yeah.
They just have to, and don't get, if you're going to try and use like Scott has, where it has like a finder scope, where it has the screws that you can center it. If you're going to use those, get ones that are bigger so you have a little wiggle room.
Yeah.
And
that's
don't
nice
go
to
93.
have, so you can really get out the cone angle and all that stuff. I like that much better. Well, guys, we promised a half-hour show. Again, we've run over a little bit. Was there anything else that we needed to for this segment to wrap up?
Nope.
No.
I think we got to discuss quite a few things. It's pretty good.
Any of you that have joined us tonight, if you have questions, you have suggestions you'd like to see for the show, if you'd like for us to, if you're watching and were nervous about jumping in because you thought that perhaps this was a little bit more technical, we can certainly, get to a more simple level, for like a beginner show or something like that. Quite easy for us to do. If you'd like to see certain videos on how to do certain things, let us know. We plan to do a bunch of really short little videos on how to do, to accomplish different tasks with Explore Stars, or how to set it up for ASCOM, or how to switch things over, these kinds of things, so you can get the real power out of the PMC-Eight. But you guys have a great weekend. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on Monday, 4:30.
Yep, thank you.
On Monday at 6 p.m. Central, I have a show with Michael Bakich from Astronomy Magazine, and we also and then Michael from the Great American Eclipse, who wrote. Do I have the book? Yes, I do. It fell off. It fell off. Sorry, guys.
You're pushing the books off.
Yeah. Sorry, Mike and Mike. This book right here, it's about the Atlas of Solar Eclipses from 2020 to 2045. So I think for all of us hanging out right now, this might be the last eclipse book we'll ever need. So but it's got some incredible illustrations and information about every eclipse all over the world. So this is a hardbound copy here, and from Michael Zeiler and Michael Beckridge.
What's it cost, Scott?
What's that?
What's it cost? What's the price?
A mere $75. Hardbound, you know.
The bargain.
It is a bargain. I mean, you couldn't pay somebody. You can, you know, if you ask somebody, could you just write all that stuff down for me and give me some
Yeah, right.
illustrations and all the rest of that? And I don't know, what do I got in my pocket? Here's $75. Okay, but that's how much of a bargain this is. So get one. Anyhow, guys, thank you so much. Thanks for tuning in, and thanks for tuning in on the other shows too. We love to have you, and we'll see you next week. Take care.
Yes, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Dark skies, everybody.
Bye-bye.